Do you think Afghanistan is just a country from the evening news? Then how about mines that are 7,000 years old and are still operating today using the same methods as in the time of the Egyptian pharaohs? Or a city where the Greeks built their quarters on top of an older city, which itself stood on top of another contemporary of the pyramids? Today we'll take a look at a country through which all the great civilizations of the ancient world passed, and each left something in this land. We'll see a minaret whose geometry outpaced Western mathematics by 8 centuries. We'll learn about caves where monks hid a library from all conquerors, and it may still be there. And in the finale, a place that might be the birthplace of 3 world religions. Ready? Let's begin. Afghanistan lies at the crossroads of all the great migration routes of the ancient world. The Persians passed through it to the east. The Greeks followed Alexander. The Arabs brought Islam here in the 7th century. The Mongols razed flourishing cities to the ground in the 13th century and left. Each left a layer in stone, in architecture, in the genes of the people living here. The French Archaeological Mission, which worked here from the 1920s to the 1970s, managed to study a few percent of the known sites, and that alone turned historical science upside down. Then came war, and another 50 years of continuous war closed this country off to science almost entirely. The last major international expedition was cut short by the Soviet invasion in 1979. Since then, only brief forays, only the surface, only what could be recorded before the next explosion. During this time, the rest of the world studied its lands far and wide. Afghanistan remained a closed book, a book that, judging by what we've seen from the outside, has very many pages. Over the past 20 years, satellite images have captured regular geometric contours beneath the soil surface across the country. Typical signs of urban structures in Ghor, Zabul, Badakhshan. The instruments see cities. Scientists know they are there, but no one is digging. The 8 secrets you will see today are only what was noticed before the doors closed. First stop, Bamiyan Province, elevation 3,000 m above sea level. A place that locals call the work of God's hands, and these are not just pretty words. 6 lakes, each its own color. Cobalt blue, turquoise, emerald, whitish, light blue, blue-gray, and almost black in the central part. Not due to lighting, but due to chemistry. Each is fed by separate underground springs. With different mineral compositions, they are separated by natural slabs of travertine, a mineral deposit. The water deposited this mineral sediment layer upon layer for millennia, until low walls up to 10 meters high formed. Band-i-Amir translates to the dam of the ruler. Geologists date their formation to several thousand years, long before Islam and any known civilization in this region. Local legend attributes the lakes to Caliph Ali, the cousin of the Prophet Muhammad. He supposedly erected the dams with a single movement of his hand to irrigate the barren land. Geology says otherwise, but neither legend nor geology provides an answer to this. An accurate map of the underground watercourses feeding the lakes has still not been made. Where does so much water with such different characteristics come from under this high-altitude plateau? Hydrologists explain it in general terms, but there is no specific plan. There is another detail that standard descriptions skip over. During dry periods, the water level in the lakes drops unevenly. One remains full, while its neighbor shrinks by half. This means the underground springs feed them independently, each with its own system, its own depth, its own horizon. What exactly is happening under this plateau has not been studied in detail. The depth of the central part of the largest lake, Bandi Haibat, has not been measured with reliable accuracy. Local fishermen say their nets have never reached the bottom. Sonar measurements taken in different years gave different results, as if the bottom topography changes with the seasons. Beneath these lakes, there is something. What exactly is an open question. Now, a few kilometers south, to where 2 giant Buddhas stood in the rock, and where the real mystery was not in the statues but behind them, something less. A Buddha, 38 meters tall, the larger one 55 meters, the height of an 18-story building, carved into the cliff. The Taliban blew them up in March 2001, and the whole world watched the explosions. But what the news didn't tell, the statues were only a facade. Behind and around, an entire mountain riddled with a system of tunnels and caves on multiple levels. The Chinese pilgrim Xuanzang, who visited Bamyan in 632 AD, described a monastery complex with 1,000 monks living right in the rock. 1,000 people inside the mountain, not outside. Inside. In 2008, Japanese and European restorers discovered oil paintings on the cave walls, dated to the 5th to 9th centuries AD. Oil painting appeared 500 years before it appeared in Europe. This discovery rewrote the history of visual art. But something else is more important. The total number of cavities in the rock massif has not yet been determined. Each new expedition finds entrances that were not on any previous map. The system goes deep into the mountain, and no one knows how far. The locals have been talking about it for centuries. Somewhere inside the mountain there is a cave called the library. The monks hid manuscripts there before the invasion of conquerors, most likely before the arrival of Genghis Khan's army in the 13th century. No expedition has found it, but none has disproved it either. Only a small part of the system has been explored. If this library exists, inside there may be texts that would rewrite the history of Buddhism, the Silk Road, and medieval Asia all at once. The mountain has been silent for 800 years. And there's more. The Hindu Kush mountain range, 800 kilometers of ridges that all of humanity has crossed. At the Kawak Pass, the elevation is 3,550 m. Every spring, coins are washed out of the melting snow. Greek, Kushan, Sasanian, Arabic. Shepherds have collected them for generations simply because they lie underfoot. No expeditions, no excavations, only snow that melts and metal that remains. It is a multi-layered archive of millennia. Winter seals it, spring opens it again. Through this pass in 329 BC, Alexander's army marched, and his soldiers' coins are still washed out of the snow. Together with coins of Arab merchants and Kushan traders, they all lie in the same ground. Layer upon layer, but the Hindu Kush holds something far more alive than coins. In the mountain valleys beyond the main ridge live the Nuristanis. This is a people whose language linguists have classified as a separate branch of the Indo-European family, not closely related to Persian, Pashto, Dari, or any other neighboring language. Genetic studies have recorded markers of ancient Central Asian populations in them, which have long since been absorbed by subsequent migration waves in other regions. Their mythology, gods, rituals, and worldview have direct structural parallels with Vedic and ancient Iranian traditions, parallels that cannot be explained by mere coincidence. The oral tradition of the Nuristanis says their ancestors came from the West in very ancient times. Exactly where does this West point to? And when did the migration occur? Linguists and geneticists are still figuring it out. The Nuristanis are a living archive of an era for which we have no written sources at all. And this archive is disappearing. The bearers of the tradition are fewer with each generation, and most of it is unrecorded. When it closes, we will lose a direct voice from a world that existed before all known history. Further on, to where beneath a Greek city they found another, and beneath that another. Alexander the Great founded no fewer than 12 cities in the territory of modern Afghanistan. One of them, presumably Alexandria of the Caucasus, stood on the site of modern Bagram, north of Kabul. French archaeologists in the 1930s and 1940s excavated a large Greco-Bactrian city there, and they immediately hit layers that go much deeper. Under the Alexandrian city, another one beneath it, and the lowest layers date back to the 3rd millennium BC. Pause on that number. When Alexander arrived here in 329 BC, beneath his feet already lay the ruins of cities that were 2,000 years old. While the Egyptians were laying blocks at Giza, here in the center of Afghanistan, cities already stood. What civilization was this? What was it called? And where did it disappear to? The excavations raised the question and were interrupted by war. Artifacts from Bagram partly ended up in the Kabul Museum, which was ransacked twice in the 1990s and 2000s. Some items surfaced on the art markets of London and New York, while the lower layers of the mound remain untouched. And there may lie the answer about a civilization about which we know absolutely nothing. And now for the mathematics, the kind that Western science discovered in the 1970s. And here it was, laid out in brick. In the 12th century in the province of Ghor, in a hard-to-reach gorge of the Hari River, a 6'5" meter minaret stands, like a 20-story building, rising from the rocky gorge, the minaret of Jam, built under Sultan Ghiyath al-Din Muhammad Ghuri. In an era when this territory was the center of one of the most brilliant Islamic civilizations of the Middle Ages, it is inaccessible for most of the year due to floods. UNESCO has listed it as a World Heritage Site. In 2007, mathematician Peter Liu from Harvard University published a study that caused a stir in the scientific community. The geometric brick ornaments covering the minaret's surface, upon detailed analysis, turned out to be a quasi-crystalline pattern, a mathematical structure with periodic symmetry that never repeats. Western science precisely discovered and described it only in the 1970s. The Nobel Prize for quasicrystals was awarded in 2011, and the 12th century masters laid out this structure in fired brick 800 years before mathematicians gave it a name. How did they do it? Did they understand the mathematics they were building, or did they find it through generations of practice? Through their hands, through a feel for the right pattern, or through knowledge that existed but left no other traces? The minaret of Jam stands in the gorge amid the sands and is in no hurry to offer explanations. Balkh was called the mother of cities, and that is not a poetic metaphor. Continuous settlement of this site is recorded for at least 3,500 years. Balkh was the capital of Zoroastrian Bactria, then part of Alexander's Greek kingdom, then the Arab Caliphate, then the Timurid Empire. Each civilization built atop the previous one, like geological strata. Today, above the ruins of Balkh rise the blue domes of the Hazrat Ali Mosque, one of the most revered Islamic sanctuaries in Afghanistan, a pilgrimage site for 1 million people. The Persian manuscript tradition calls Balkh the birthplace of Zoroaster, the founder of Zoroastrianism, a religion that arose no later than the 2nd millennium BC. If that is true, then it is here that the concept was born, without which there would be no angels or demons in the Abrahamic traditions, nor the idea of the Last Judgment. No resurrection of the dead, no struggle between good and evil as central themes. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam inherited these ideas through direct contact with the Zoroastrian tradition during the period of Persian dominance. 3 religions followed by more than half of humanity may trace their roots back to one Afghan city. French archaeologists from the mid-20th century recorded finds in Balkh that they did not have time to fully document. War drove them out, and some of the reports lie in Parisian archives. What exactly lies beneath Balkh, deeper than the layers already uncovered, no living scientist knows today. Official science shrugs its shoulders. The earth is silent. In the mountains of Badakhshan, in northeastern Afghanistan, at an altitude of over 3,000 meters, lies a deposit of Lapis Lazuli. It has been operating continuously for at least 7,000 years, making it one of the oldest active mining enterprises in human history. Lapis lazuli from these mines has been found in the tombs of Egyptian pharaohs of the 18th dynasty, in the jewelry of Sumerian queens from Ur, and in Mesopotamian mosaics from the 3rd millennium BC. Ultramarine, the blue pigment from lapis lazuli, was more expensive than gold in medieval Europe. Its price per ounce exceeded that of silver. It was used to paint the robes of the Virgin Mary in the most significant Renaissance altarpieces by Raphael and Botticelli. For Titian, all this blue came from one place from a single gorge in the inaccessible Afghan mountains. There are still no roads to these mines, and in winter the passes are closed for several months. Exactly how the heavy stone made its way from these mountains to Egypt and Mesopotamia 5,000 years ago, there is no complete reconstruction of the routes. The ancient trade routes of lapis lazuli have only been partially restored. The mines still operate today. The rock is heated with fire and split with cold water, a technology unchanged for millennia. The workers say the same things their grandfathers and great-grandfathers said. The mountain itself decides how much stone to yield in a given season. 7,000 years, one technology, one stone, and the blue color in paintings across Europe. And finally, the Panjshir Valley is a narrow gorge north of Kabul, known today for its military impregnability. But before politics came here, people came for silver. The Arab geographer Ibn Hakal, writing around 980 AD, described Panjshir as one of the largest sources of silver in the Islamic world. Coins made from Panjshir metal have been found from Spain to China, from Scandinavia to India. A single mountain corridor a few kilometers wide supplied silver to half the known world. Geological structure. The deposit makes extraction using traditional methods extremely difficult. The ore veins run deep at a steep angle. Medieval miners without explosives or mechanical drills extracted huge volumes of metal here. Exactly how they excavated mines in this geology has not been fully reconstructed by researchers. And here is what local miners have repeated for generations. Silver grows in Panjshir. Veins that seem completely depleted yield metal again after a few years. Geologists explain this by hydrothermal processes. Hot solutions from deep levels carry metal into already worked out zones. This is a documented fact. But the rate of redeposition, specifically under Panjshir conditions, has not been systematically measured, and how literally true the folk observation about metal that returns on its own remains an open question. The mountain gives, takes back, gives again, and so it has been for 1,000 years. Panjshir translates from Persian as 5 lions, named after 5 brothers who, according to legend, guarded this pass in ancient times. For 5,000 years, people have called this place by the name of its guardians. And all that time, the mountain has been accumulating metal, giving it away, and accumulating it again. Now let's look at the whole picture. Bandi Amir with its 6 multicolored lakes and a bottom that fishermen's nets have never reached. Bamiyan with the world's ancient oil paintings and a library that has been sought for centuries. The Kawak Pass, where every spring washes out coins of Greeks, Kushans, and Arabs right under the feet of shepherds. Bagram, with cities from the 3rd millennium BC lying beneath Greek quarters. The minaret of Jam, with quasi-crystalline mathematics in brick, 800 years before the Nobel Prize. Balkh, the possible birthplace of ideas, without which 3 world religions would not exist. Lapis Lazuli from Badakhshan, which colored robes and Madonnas in Renaissance paintings. Panjshir silver, which according to the miners grows back into the veins. 8 places, 8 layers, 1 land, and this is less than 5% of what exists here. According to researchers, less than 5% of known archaeological sites in Afghanistan have been covered by all systematic expeditions. That means 95% of what lies here has not been touched by a single shovel. Behind every place we've seen today, there are dozens more without a name, without a map, without a single photograph, simply because no one has reached them yet.